Hello, beautiful soul sister, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Kiger. I'm a trauma-informed master mindset and money coach, as well as a financial expert of over 17 years. I have spent my entire adult life studying the difference between successful and unsuccessful people, and I plan on sharing all of the things with you on this journey together. This podcast is called the Soul Powered Podcast because it's my desire to share with you how to create a life that is powered by your soul, not by societal standards or what everyone else in your life tells you that you should be doing, but actually powered by your soul. The reason you'd want to do this is because I believe that this is the fastest way to unlock your portal to prosperity and become what I call the wildly wealthy woman. This is the portal that once you enter it, you gain access to the prosperity, abundance, wealth, time freedom, experiences, fulfillment that are your birthright. I don't believe that you came here to build someone else's dreams. I believe you came here to live your soul-powered life and live it to the fullest. And I plan on sharing with you exactly how to do that during our time together. So thank you so much for being here. I know we're going to have so much fun together today. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I have an incredible guest with me. We have Terri Lee Shields, and I'm so excited to dive into our conversation. So, Terri, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
So excited to have you. So let's really just start off with kind of giving our listeners a little bit of an idea of you and who you are. So can you just share who is it that you help in this world and how do you help them? Let's go with that.
Okay, Brill. Thank you. I suppose I'm one of those people that doesn't fit in a box. So actually, I'm a creative and a designer, and I had to kind of take a bit of a diversion in my life, shall we say, to really focus on my healing and recovery. I kind of realized that my life wasn't going in the direction that it needed to. I had been kind of moving from one traumatic experience to another and just never addressed it until it all got to a critical point and it was unavoidable. So I had a spiritual awakening experience, if you like, diverted my life, and it's taken me into a few different directions. So what I do now is I host a space and I mentor people around natural recovery, generally from things like trauma, abuse, circumstances where we get ourselves, in really stressful situations. And also I bring together all of these other aspects of myself in my life. So a lot of the focus is around nature connection. I spent quite a few years observing nature. I do permaculture design, so kind of look at how nature kind of creates systems and ecosystems, how nature heals, how, I look at energy in all of them forms, from like the physical to the etheric, and kind of had to understand, naturally quite intuitive. So I've had to understand all that as part of my healing journey. And then because I'm a creative as well, there's a really, this design element, this creativity element, which I think is actually a really healing way that we can express ourselves and tap into our intuitive nature, that kind of, we can create in life. I think that's why we're here, to create stuff. So I do a few different things, but I try to bring all of what I've learned together in a space called Love School. And we explore what it means to love ourselves, love each other, love life, and heal and recover in natural, holistic ways.
Oh my God, I love that. And I feel like so many of us have that same type of journey where if I could share how many spiritual awakenings and dark nights of the soul and all of the things that I've had to go through at this point, it's sometimes I'm going through one a bit right now. And so, I think it's really beautiful to bring all of those incredibly painful experiences for us into a space where we just want to help other people heal. To me, that's the definition of a light worker. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, I think as well, right? Well, one, I don't I'll go off on one, but we're in such a potent time, right? Energetically, there's like amazing things happening. And when you're in the thick of these transformations or these experiences, they happen when we're in our darkest times. They're happening when we're going through challenges that we never prepared for. That's what the awakening is, right? We're suddenly like, we have to grow, we have to evolve, we have to change, we have to prise our heart open a little bit more if we want to stay, aligned and enjoying life, because otherwise these experiences, they can crush our soul. And that was kind of what was happening for me. And then I think initially as well, I thought it was just me for a long time. Like I felt really kind of in that. And it seemed like nobody else, like, especially the culture I grew up in and things, nobody else seemed to like, I don't know, just respond to any of it. Like I say, that's why I just kind of got used to like living in this kind of mask, this veil, like I say, of all the dark stuff that was happening and all these deep experiences. And I would just keep moving on and moving on until it got to a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And then now, kind of gone through this process, and more of us are able to have gone through a healing process. We can speak out, we can connect. And obviously then there's the magic of all the internet and all that, where we can speak over such far distances and everything. And it's like, oh shit, it wasn't just, sorry for the swearing.
No, you don't have to apologize.
It wasn't just me. I wasn't the only one going through all this stuff. I am not absolutely insane. And I think that was a big part of it as well. Like, I think when like evolving as a human, and we're evolving to see that there's so much more than just the physical. The physical is when you can tap into it. I just think our physical reality is magnificent anyway, but there's so much more than just that. And we all perceive it differently. And when we can like start to open up about that and see each other's pain, see each other's unique experiences and expressions, and then tap into our own, that's how we're kind of completely changing the fabric of our realities individually and collectively.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think life's supposed to necessarily be easy, although the modern culture loves and likes to tell us it is.
Yeah.
Or I think because we have all been through a lot of pain, and like I say, I think we're kind of moving through that. Wanting ease is natural, and just wanting a bit of comfort and convenience, it's lovely. It's a blessing, but I'm not sure that that's what life is necessarily supposed to be about, or why we were put here.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really such a crucial time, like you said, in humanity right now, where we are starting to actually come out and speak to the things and the systems and the structures and the man-made, let's call it matrix or, system, whatever you want to call the structure that we're living in, the paradigm that we're living in. But we're seeing how damaging this all has been. And I love that the internet has allowed us to do that. And I think that it's played such a crucial role in us getting information and seeing, like you said, that we're not alone, because that was such a big part for my journey as well, that like I felt like I was completely alone. And I think that, it's designed to be that way. Whereas if we can really actually connect with each other and see that we're all on this journey, it really is so healing. Don't you agree? Like, I just think that us coming together and saying, you're not alone, this is normal, this is what we're intended to experience in order to evolve, instead of this is going to break me.
Yeah, there's
That's
like,
what allows for us to move to the next level.
I kind of get caught up a bit on the duality of life. And it's like, there's this idea of oneness, right? That we're all one thing, but we all having this individual experience. So like this independence is an illusion. We're not independent, like nothing is independent. We all need each other. We all need everything else to survive, even if we are directing our own journey and we don't see or sense or feel a connection to it all. Like we can't avoid that. And I feel like that's like one of the main illusions of the matrix. If I like that word, it's like a funny word in it, but it's like the more that we kind of think that all we are is independent, and it's such an easy belief, idea, illusion to break once you can see through it, because it's like, well, how are you wearing clothes? Because you certainly didn't create them clothes yourself. And I hate to even think how many people have been involved in producing these clothes that we're just wearing, taken advantage of. We didn't build the house that we're in. We the air that we're all breathing. It kind of, when I try and bring everything down to that physicality, it makes all this like etheric stuff, because it's such a big idea.
Yeah.
It can feel so big and overwhelming, and you're like, no, I don't know, are we really here for this huge spiritual experience? And then it's like, well, just consider the physical, because the physical is immense. Like I can't deny the complexity of just how we have what we have right now. Like, feel like we've evolved to a point because we're like going through, we're addressing our pain, we're addressing these generations and generations and generations of all these different kinds of trauma and karmic cycles and all that, which is, I feel like, is coming to this point at the minute energetically. And simultaneously, we have all of this physical luxury that our ancestors never had.
Wow.
And we've got all of this information. Like, there's so much information now. Ignorance is not really an option.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, like, especially like in our world, and like you say, in the Western world, if you're living in these sort of conditions and you've got access to the internet, we're living in a time where we have the most information we could ever want, the luxuries of the physical that, like I say, our ancestors could never have even imagined or dreamed of. But I think the contrast to that is we are being invited to really look at the cost and the toll of that, and then what that means for all of us individually. And I think that's partly why maybe we've got this spiritual challenge of us as we evolve in that next stage. You know what I mean? Like,
I 100% agree with that. I actually had a download around this. My husband's an electrician, so he has studied like electrical theory. And so obviously we're all energy, right? So I learn a lot from like talking with him. And I had this thought the other day that, like, you know how sometimes when your phone will, it's like goes into like overdrive, like it starts acting up, so you have to like reset it, turn it off and turn it back on. Same thing with computers, like all electrical devices. They seem to just like magically get fixed as soon as you unplug them and plug them back in due to like overload, right? It's like this overload of information, this overload of processing that's happening. But if we're all energy and we're no different than, really the computer, right? If you think about it, we're programmed the same way. I believe that we're very similar to a computer. And our minds and our nervous systems are taking in like millions of bits of information every single second. If you really think about it, like this is kind of, so to your point, I just had this download around how we can really set up these energetic boundaries for ourselves, that like the system is designed to, yes, it's great that we can have all of this access to information right away, but we do have to be conscious in the way that we're using it. Because if we're just scrolling endlessly or watching the news or watching TV, that's literally like, okay, imagine we're a computer, like a blank slate, right? And then we're just downloading all this stuff all the time. And that's what puts us into overwhelm. That's what puts us into overdrive. That's what puts us into like these heightened places of fight, flight. Like our bodies are not designed for this. So I would love to kind of move into, and you're welcome to like share anything on that. But as leading up to this question, I know you spent a lot of time studying how cyclical nature is, and I would love to just like even kind of go into that conversation a bit, where what are we seeing that nature's doing that is different than what we're doing, and how are we holding ourselves back by being so attached to this system that has been created for us? I don't know if that's a really big question, but let's
it
just
is, yeah.
dive in.
But that was exactly where it was going, like, as you were talking, because I'm like, and this is what I love, how all these kind of ideas come together, because once you understand energy and the nature of energy, you can adapt and adopt those theories, ideas, analogies, whatever you want to call them, into like seeing the patterns, because that's all we are, is these repeating patterns. And it's like exactly the same in a natural ecosystem as what exactly what you were just saying, like about ourselves or the computer. If too much of the same thing or too much is going on in an ecosystem, it becomes out of balance. And what you'll find is exactly what you said, the ecosystem will just shut down because nothing can sustain itself properly. The ecosystem can't cope with the amount of, like, if you look and say at like a simple system of predator and prey in an ecosystem, there's too many predators in an ecosystem and they end up then overhunting. What happens? The prey, they runs out of prey, the predators then start to die off, it has to reset. So then
Wow.
slowly we have to rebuild, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
kind of get that abundance, and then it resets. And that's just like the natural cycle. And you can see that pattern in everything. You can see it in the tides, the way the water moves. You can see it in the weather and the cycles. There's always these like peaks and resets, if you like the clouds. You're looking at the water vapor builds up, it builds to the point where there's so much density in the clouds, it has to rain. Once it rains, it clears, the clouds move on.
I'm even thinking of like seasons.
Yeah, all of it. Once you start to see it, and then for me, realizing we're part of that. So we've created, like I say, these safe spaces and things, and we have access to all this stuff. But this is like a blip in human evolution, like a dot of it's a brand new experience, and it's a dot compared to how we've evolved. And it's all built on ideas, concepts, understandings that came from people, other humans who didn't have what we have. And how? Because they were tapped into the energy of nature.
Yeah.
The conscious ones, the ones that were paying attention, were potentially like learning things and then adapting that to new technology. That's how we got all of the stuff we've got. And then there's like the other people who would have just went along with their lives, never considered much, and just experienced the experience. And there's no right or wrong in that. But if we try too much to constantly manipulate our environment, which has happened a lot now, or ourselves, just mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, we're going to crash, we're going to overload, and then we need to reset. We need to kind of go by. I see it like breathing, you know what I mean? We need to release, get right back to our basics, and then we can build up again. And we have these cycles in our own evolution, in our development, and I'm quite big on the idea of karmic cycles and stuff at the minute, just because of everything that's going on with the astrology and stuff, which I'm not going to talk about because I'm not an expert in that at all. But
I was going to say we could go down there if you want.
Yeah, I just find it super fascinating at the minute. I've never paid much attention to it, but there's amazing things happening with that at the minute. It's just kind of come into my awareness, and I'm like, wow, this kind of makes sense for so much stuff that I've learned through watching nature and just how everything works, connects.
Yeah. Everything seems to have this divine order, and yet for some reason we are, well, not for some reason. I mean, we've been programmed to believe that we're not part of it, that we are not. And I think a lot of that, has to do with keeping us disconnected from those cycles, from our nature, because then that would obviously empower us, make sure that we're tapped in and we're intuitive, and, a system that is designed to control is not going to be a it's not going to be a good fit for people who are empowered and intuitive and are in tune with their own energy and their own power. And I think that it's just really interesting to see us kind of all coming back to that anyway. And I feel like there's more of us now than ever, and I think the internet, like we said, is a huge part of that. And I love just really sharing these stories because I think a lot of people do believe that they're alone, especially when you're going through these dark nights of the soul. Like, oh my gosh, I kind of liken it to like a caterpillar going into a cocoon, right? And it's like, I don't know if a caterpillar that goes into a cocoon knows what the hell's going on. Like, they probably don't know up from down, they don't know left from right, they probably think they're dying. Like, I cannot even imagine what the process of metamorphosis would feel like for a caterpillar. They literally like turn into goo and then come back as like this beautiful butterfly. And that's what I liken a spiritual awakening to. And I think a lot of people really struggle to get through that part of it because, like you said, it can feel like you are literally dying, literally, and there are aspects of us that are. So,
Yeah.
is there anything that, okay, so leading into this, are there any things that you have learned in terms of cycles in nature, whether it be, even like our menstrual cycle, right? I know that like that's a thing. Cycle syncing is also a thing with women. But is there anything that you've learned that would be helpful for people to sort of step back into their power, bearing in mind that we are no different than the nature's like the cycles in nature?
Yes. Well, so it's funny what you said, the butterfly thing. It comes up so much. I developed a series of tools that I call life design tools. And it was kind of a spin-off from when I was understanding permaculture design, which is literally, they use it for initially for agriculture. It's developed in lots of different tangents because of the different people that have gotten involved. But in permaculture, it's observing nature and then consciously kind of using those observations of nature to design systems, agricultural systems initially, food-based systems initially, to have a more sustainable, abundant production. So I've just wanted to kind of frame that a little bit. And that's how I started on the deeper stuff of my healing journey, was once I realized that these tools could be adapted for anything. I was like, oh, this doesn't have to just be food or agriculture. This could be people. This could be social systems. This could be anything. So over the past few years, I've been developing different tools that are kind of a spin-off on that, based on some of my own experiences. And funny enough, so one of them is a really simple one called the metamorphosis method, which is looking at the cycle of a butterfly. And you can kind of just look at these really 3 simple stages when you're trying to like develop or go through an experience. And if we just focus on that, for example, and I think this is one of the things that we can observe in nature for more sentient beings, right? And actually, I think this plant, you can see it in plants and everything. I don't necessarily think they're not sentient. They're just in a different way, different form than we.
I agree.
Generally, this 3 energy type is, I've got a couple of life design tools around it. It's a really effective and simple way to do it. I have some really complex life design tools, but the 3 stages just seems to work as a pattern, which you've got like the masculine, feminine, and the child. You've got this kind of dichotomy that creates something new all the time, which is a bit like the caterpillar, the mush, and then the butterfly. We have consciousness that we can take control. We've got choice. We've got a power of choice, right? And you can see that in plants. You can see it in animals. They'll choose how to adapt to their circumstances, always with this innate drive to survive, thrive. And it's maybe much more, I can't think of the word, not innate, primal than what we maybe it's like to admit that we are. But like any animal is going to want to meet the needs that arise. So it's like using our consciousness to go after what we want, what we innately know meets our needs. But then there's also this surrendering to the process of who we are and finding peace with who we are. Part of the matrix is just to condition ourselves, like I say, to be out of alignment with nature, but our own nature.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing at the minute, like of influencer culture, is like a big thing, that there's a certain way to be, a certain way to think, certain way to dress, certain way to act, certain way to respond, certain way to feel. And we're taking, like I say, all these messages now on such a massive scale. We go through a formal education training us how to think, and all this stuff that we have to, if we want to be ourselves, decondition. So that has to, like when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, we have to just let that die, turn to mush. Like, can I evolve past this? Certain things like help us when we're young, when we need, we can't take care of ourselves when we're babies, when we're young children. We need structure and supports, and we get these guidance from our parents. It's all a natural evolution. Like if you just had a child and just dumped them out in the world, they're not gonna survive. Or that obviously happens to a lot of children in the past. They did, but they've struggled and had trauma that they've never really had an opportunity to evolve past. So get stuck in this conditioning forever. When we can find peace with ourselves and our nature and go into that mush of, I'm feeling all this stuff, I'm having all these experiences, maybe I don't need to understand what it means, but maybe I can understand what it means. And this discernment of it. And when we can understand who we are, surrender into that process, is kind of when we emerge as a butterfly, if that makes sense. So the caterpillar doesn't know it's a caterpillar. It's just a caterpillar, right? And it's going out there looking after its needs. It's eating all the food it needs. It's taking in everything it needs in order just to get to this next phase. The caterpillar doesn't know it's going to go into the chrysalis. It just follows its intuition. It just kind of does what it needs to do. And then it goes into that phase. And I think this is really natural part of growing and maturing, especially when we're children. We're just taking in all this stuff. We're just living life, doing it. But then our instinct, something comes up, the spiritual awakening, where all of a sudden that doesn't work for us anymore because we're supposed to evolve into something else. So we have this phase of just having to let it all go. Everything that was keeping us alive or before has to just be let go of. You know what I mean? And unlearn, which is something that I've like chatted with a lot of people about. A lot of healing and spiritual growth is like, it's letting go of all the stuff we thought that we needed, or we were told that we needed, all these things that have helped us survive. But actually, if you want to become the butterfly and you want to thrive and be able to go wherever you want in the world because you've got these beautiful wings, that old condition is not going to weigh you down. It's not going to weigh you down. It will weigh you down rather. So it's not going to allow for that to happen. And most animals go through, this process, and they kind of do it naturally as well.
Yeah, and they're not thinking about, they don't
They're
have
just
all the
doing it.
limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
The
Like just
programming
like
telling them they shouldn't.
plants, flowers, they go through these phases. They don't fight it. They just do it. They just grow, set up roots, start to
Yeah.
grow, then they bloom. Oh, then the winter comes and then they die and they go in again. And then they start to grow again, a bit bigger, and they bloom. Talking about roses. I always think of roses when I think of that, because they're so beautiful when you watch like these processes and you think they're just doing it. They're just surrendered to the fact, well, I'm a rose or I'm a
Yeah.
tree or I'm a dog, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
They're just living. And we, we kind of have touched on the reasons why, but we just fight it. We just fight it so much. And if we can like learn, I think, not to fight with life so much and just accept it's part of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, to add to that, I agree with everything you're saying. And what came to mind as you were speaking is like, my husband said to me probably a month ago or so, he goes, you have grown into every container that you've put yourself in. And he said that to me, and I thought, because I was considering joining a mastermind group and like rejoining a mastermind group. And he said, so why would you think that this one would be any different, right? Like, why wouldn't you just grow into this space as well? And I thought, as you're saying this, I'm thinking like, the container is also really important, meaning like who you surround yourself with. Like if you take a seedling, right? Or how, okay, I'm really not, so you're gonna like probably laugh at me. The terminology is gonna be lacking here, but just stay with me for the analogy. But like when someone is planting a tree, and I know here like in the US they have professionals that like you can go and you can buy a already, like they've already got the seedling going, right? Because I think that's the hard part, right? So we can go and buy a tree and then you got to plant it. But if you never take that tree out into the yard and plant it in the earth, and you just keep it in a pot, like a pot this big, like that's all the bigger it's going to grow, right? So
Yeah.
if you're someone who wants to, and you're listening to this and you want to get to that next level and you want to start living a soul-powered life, you want to get out there and you want to put yourself out there more, you want to get through a spiritual awakening, but you're trying to do it in a container of people that have no fucking clue how to help you. Okay, that's not going to work because you're only going to grow to the size of that container and that's going to be it. So if you feel like you're stalled right now, that could be why, right? And so if you take that very same plant, put it in a bigger plant or a bigger pot, you're going to grow. It's going to grow to that, right? So the more, but eventually you've got to be able to say, do I actually want to go out and live my life to the fullest extent? And now, if that's the case, you've got to be planted outside, right? And the wind comes by and it might be scary and it might be cold, but if you have done the work and you've done the inner work, especially around people who are going to support you, who are going to help you, coaches, mentors, friends, support groups, you're going to be able to stand tall and be that incredibly beautiful tree that stands in its certainty, that is strong, that is deeply rooted, that doesn't waver, right? And I think that like that's a process, but I just bring it up because I want to point out the fact that like if there are people who are going through these kinds of things alone, that's a really, really big red flag in my opinion. Like you want to look at yourself and see, why do I keep choosing to do this alone? Why do I want to do this alone? This we're not meant to do this. Like you said, Terri, like people have created we're already co-creating our life with other people. So what's the difference if we open up and we're vulnerable and we ask for support and we get around others who are going to help us? Because that's really, I believe, what it's going to take to combat the programming and to wake up and to be able to live in our most fully authentic lives. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think like for me, it's a expansion and contraction because
Mm.
I've actually gone through a lot of a massive hermit phase, but actually that's kind of how my energy works anyway in for my human design and stuff. I needed to go into that chrysalis because of my personal evolution, and I didn't even choose that was how it happened. So for me, I think it's like a duality of both, because we reach, like I say, certain containers will stifle us. And once we reach that boundary of that container, we've got two options. We can either move out and expand, right? If you want to grow. And then when you move into like I say, in that new pot, there's this massive kind of space around. And that's quite a vulnerable time, because in that time, like what the plant is doing is then going back to its roots. It's going back in itself before it grows outwards. So it's growing from the inside before it kind of goes out and up and into the world.
Mm.
So the life design, for example, that I do, like that's like a tool. It's like a structure. Like I say, it's like a container. Same with when you invest in mentors, coaches, therapy, whatever it might be. If you're then putting yourself, like I say, in a vulnerable position, getting right into your roots to then have to like grow into that container. And that's kind of like a natural thing to do. But it all comes from within us, like you say. So we're building the tools, we're building the understanding, we're gaining the knowledge for ourselves that will then always be restricted by the container. So the other aspect of life design that I talk about is like shadow work, which is I know it'll definitely be a lot of what you've done from what I've seen with your things, which is then going into like what's all this underlying stuff. Like that's like the deeper stuff. That's like when we go into ourselves and it's like, well, what is this next phase that I want to grow into? Why? What's blocking us? What's stopping us? What's holding us back? What are these beliefs, ideas, circumstances, whatever it might be? Because it's either something in our physical, it's either something mental, emotional, environmental, or in our relationships. And until we can kind of figure out what that is, and often that's an introspective, I think we'll start to see in our experiences anyway, the universe always, in my experience, especially when I work with other people on that, the universe always responds, right? And it'll always start to show you where your stuff is, where your limits are, right?
Yep.
So anytime you get to yes, we all know that, the eye roll, like, oh yes, it will. And it can be deep and hard, but it's also like magical when you consider it. Sometimes I get so mind blown about it all when I think about all the experiences I've had. But when you reach that edge, you think, you know what, actually, I'm quite comfortable in this container. It's cozy and it's safe.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the universe will go, hang on a minute, you know what? I don't think you are.
I
And it
know.
just starts to
You're
show
ready
you,
for
like
this.
you start to feel the pain. And even at the beginning, when you're not conscious of that, when you're not aware, that can be really scary. That's when all this extra stuff gets thrown at us until we're like, okay, I need to expand, and we surrender, and then we're moved. And I think it's like these processes, like exactly that analogy that you were saying, they are what build our resilience, our spirit, our energy. We can then start to recognize these patterns. We start to recognize our own needs, for expansion and things. We start to understand how we can respond to all the different weather. We can start to understand the value of what connecting with others brings. And we can also then trust in our own ability to look at ourselves. Because I think for whatever reason, for humans, that's one of the scariest things that is the spiritual awakening, isn't it? It's like you need to look at yourself and you're like, you know what? Nah.
I'd rather
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to look at myself. I'm not going to kind of find out why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to be really unhappy with what I'm doing and what's happening.
Yeah, leave me alone. I'm cool here.
Yeah, I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to ask any questions.
Not my business.
Yeah,
Right.
until, like I say, and the universe just will not allow that. If we're meant to grow, and I genuinely think we are, the more we try to hold on to that pot, that container, right? and the universe is trying to pull us out. So I'll carry this a little bit, right? I have worked with plants. Whenever I'm trying to move a plant, a repot a plant, it's got pot bound, or I'm trying to move it from one place to another, I'm trying to take a cutting or whatever. At the beginning, because I was quite like rough when I was like learning about that, and I had that mindset of like, I can just control this plant and make it do what I want to do. I was quite rough with it. And sometimes, the plant holds on, right? Sometimes it's
Wow.
really hard to get like a pot band plant out of that. The roots have clung onto the container, or it's clinging to the earth for dear life, and you're like fighting with it. And over time, I like learned to just tap into my heart center and just tell the plant my intentions. So just tell the plant, I
Wow.
am moving you so you can grow in a more appropriate space, or I'm moving you into a bigger pot so you can get bigger, or I'm going to take cuttings. Tell me where you want to be cut. Right? Do you know what? The energy
Wow.
changes, and the plant will go, oh, okay. And it's like the wants,
Whoa.
like it wants to expand, and the plant, once it knows that intention, will kind of release into it. So it's like when you're
Mm.
gardening, or when I was gardening a lot more, it's like a symbiotic thing. You realize that, you know what, you're not controlling the garden is responding to your requests. And you can put a plant in a place you want to put it. If it's the wrong conditions, the plant's just going to die. And if you're not a good gardener, you might have to think, oh shit, I need to lift this up and put it somewhere else. And when you can think about that from a gardener's perspective of what God or the universe is doing for us, and it's like, your container is too small.
Mm.
This might feel a bit rough because I'm going to move you around, but in this new place, you're going to be able to get bigger and stronger. Or, I'm going to have to remove some stuff from your life. So when you regrow, it's more fruitful. I'm going
Yeah.
to take this little bit of your energy and put it somewhere else, because when it's over there, it's going to bloom into something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
exactly the same for our spiritual journey and our soul journey. We can like get really comfortable in these containers, and the more we try to fight with the universe and hold onto the container, the more stress and tension and all of that just builds up. And that's when I think, people get really, really unwell. That's when we cause for ourselves mental health issues, physical health issues, financial health issues, relationship issues, whatever it is. It's because we're like clinging and the
Yeah.
universe is trying to like pull us up, and we're like, no, I am staying here. And all of that energy is just causing this stress. And yes,
Mm.
okay, it's scary when we're being moved, or we can feel that we're going to lose something, or we have to let go of a part of ourselves, whatever it is. They're like challenging experiences to go through. But for me, like learning to have faith in that process, like thinking of the universe, the nature is always wanting to thrive. So if nature wants, if God, however you look at it, if that conscious energy wants to move you somewhere else and take you out of one container and put you in the other, it's always in your best interest, because ultimately it's wanting to create this beautiful, balanced ecosystem.
Mm.
So if you're dying in one area, if your energy is dying and you're dwindling and you're feeling a move, or like I say, you're being pulled up to like go somewhere else, or into it, or feeling drawn to a different container, like you were saying, it's all part of the process. You've got, like, I had to learn to give into that. And then once you give into that and you've learned all these lessons from all these different containers and everything, then you're just out in the wild. You're in the
Yeah.
rainforest. And
Right. And you get to grow like super high. And that just kind of reminded me of, there was like a TikTok video or something that I saw. So I don't know the person's name, so forgive me for not giving credit, but there was a video around, the person was saying that like an oak tree, let's say, right? We know how big an oak tree will get. An oak tree in the seed is designed to grow, right? It's in its intelligent divine design. It is designed to grow into a massive tree. But are there oak seeds that are planted that don't ever grow? Yeah, I'm certain of it, because the only two reasons would be they're either not receiving water or sunlight, or they're not in the right environment. Like they're literally not in the environment that they need to be in, or they're not being taken care of. So when we look at it from that lens, can you think of how much more humans are in terms of our innate design? And I don't want to say more. I know we're all sentient. I know we're all conscious. I just mean the consciousness that we hold, the ability to change the world and create things. Obviously, like a tree doesn't have the same capacity in the same way, even though they're incredibly intelligent and have their own purpose. But for a person and a human being, like, you don't think that you have everything in you, like the seedling of who it is that you are. So if you're not growing, if you're not expanding, if you're not getting to that next level, whatever that looks like for you, there's only one of two reasons, right? It's either you're not in the right environment, you're not getting the sunlight that you need, and the soil sucks, or you're not watering it every day. You're not working towards it every day. And that's okay if you're not, because there's only two things you got to do. Make sure you're in the right environment and water that shit, right? Just make sure that you're putting forth the time meditating or spending time in your journal, using your, nervous system practices, like using your tools, all these tools that you're talking about too, like this isn't something that someone else is going to be able to do for you. It's not like a plant where we've got to go out and water it, or, nature does that, of course. Like we have to be the ones to take ownership of that. And it just really should be a bit of an encouragement for our listeners to say, like, that's all I got to do is just focus on getting in the right environment, finding the right people, building yourself up, right? And getting around people who will also build you up, and then just dedicating yourself to it. That seedling in the right environment with the right kind of sunlight and the right kind of water every day is going to grow. That is divine nature. That is like universal law. That's how it works. So why would you think that you would be any different, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's like, I mean, I see it as a co-creation, because sometimes we can't control the environment we are born into, for example. I mean, we can go into a debate of whether souls choose all that. And like I say,
I believe they do. Yeah.
yeah, I'm big on the karma at the minute. I think that is by design. I think we're born in circumstances that
Same.
either we need to learn from or have been designed to learn through.
Yep.
Either way, we're there, right? But that baby, the human baby, like I say, you can't choose. Our soul, our spirit might have, but the baby can't choose to just move out of its circumstances. So we're kind of not in control of that from our very beginnings. And
In
that's
the
where all this
beginning. Yeah.
conditioning starts, right? We are put where we're put. We're planted, we have to kind of grow where we're planted in that first container, whatever that is. And then there's times even like as well in my life, like where you want to grow or you're trying to grow. And like, this is why it's important, I think, to move and things when you can, and things just aren't changing. So like for me, there's a divine time into everything. There's a season for everything. So sometimes if you're trying to co-create something or you're trying to create something and it's just not happening, for me, that's probably that you're not in that season. So if you're trying to build and grow something and it's not growing, right? If you overwater a plant in the winter and it's really, really cold, it could kill it, because it could freeze, and then that could get into the root system and contract it, right? And in the winter, the plants are going into its root system, and that's what it's doing. It's not expanding outwards. So if we're trying to do something, this is where when we're talking about fighting against our nature and stuff, if we're trying to do something and all our energy and tension and stress is going outwards and it's not happening, it's not creating for us, it's probably a call that this is the season actually to be going within. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's like this, it's being able to do that, like ebb and flow, and understand that we are in control of we can consciously create our experience. And there's also a time when we need to completely surrender to the circumstances or the environment, because we've probably got something to learn then.
Yes.
If we're in a certain environment and we're trying to push our way through it, right? We're trying to like, oh, I don't want to be here. You, for whatever reason, whatever actions you took, whatever decisions you made, you ended up in that environment. You ended up in that circumstance. So if you're trying to push your way out of it and it's not happening, and you're like, this is where I am, this is the container I'm in, this is the environment, this is the circumstances, that's the time to go in and start to look at, well, what if I can't control if I can't change what's happening, if I can't control that, what can I do? I can surrender to the situation, live in and embody this situation, and find out what I need to learn from it. Because there's always a lesson, is actually what I've discovered. When we have really hard times, when we have losses, when we have these circumstances that happen that we know are gonna potentially forever change our trajectory of our lives, or even if it's temporary, whatever it is, something we don't want or we don't necessarily think is desirable, a lot of our spiritual growth is going to come from that. When we dive into these dark nights of the soul, that's why we have them. When we go into those periods of reflection, contemplation, grief, emotional states, all this stuff, when we surrender into them, that's when we kind of find the other side of our nature. So there's like this showy side that we show the world, where we're trying to do all this stuff and we're creating all this stuff, like, you know, all of that, the tree that you see with all the beautiful leaves or the flowers or the fruit. But beneath the surface, the tree has also got this really complex system that's going on. And actually, that's what's nurturing the tree. That's what makes all the rest of it possible. So the more that we can find ease with these cycles of creation and surrender to our circumstances, to our emotions, whatever it is that's going on. And I generally find the more conscious you can be, for me, the easier it was when we look at our cycles. So like if you pay attention to your menstrual cycle, for example, if you're a woman and you're paying attention to your menstrual cycle, you go through these phases of different moods, different energy levels, different moods, right? So before you're aware of it, you think, why am I so angry today? Why am I eating all this junk food crap? And then after a while, once you know your cycle, you're like, I know exactly where I am in my cycle. My period is now going to come on in 2 days. And this makes total sense. So I'm just going to completely surrender to, this is where my hormones are today. And I'm just going to no longer reject that experience because I understand it. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm aware of it. And it's like the same sort of thing. Like there's this co-creation of masculine and feminine when we're doing and when we're introspecting and reflecting, when we're changing outwardly and when we're like changing internally, when we're feeling joy, when we're feeling grief. All of this stuff, it like builds up the picture of what we are. That's kind of building up our energy. That's how nature works. That's how we get these beautiful like cycles of life, like I say, of the different seasons, of the different weathers, of the different ecosystems and environments. We're all like going through these cycles and seasons, and the more we can surrender into that as part of it, learn from it, change what we can, and, you know, find peace with what we can't change. Eventually you get to that point where when you get planted out, you can just be a tree.
Exactly.
You can just be the tree. Or the butterfly or whatever it is you're going to become, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know when we're the you know, the little acorn doesn't know it's going to grow into an oak tree. It just does. The caterpillar doesn't know it's going to become a butterfly. It just does. We don't know what we're going to become until we just do become it.
I love that so much. And yeah, I think that leading into, as we're winding down the plane today, I think that talking a little bit about containers. So I would love for you to take some time, Terri, to share what does working with you look like? What would be the transformation that maybe someone would expect, and where can they find you? If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about your work and what it is that you do, maybe just take a couple, like a moment or so to talk about that.
I always forget that part. I'm happy like chit chat.
No,
Connect with
I
people,
forgot about that part. Yeah.
There's a couple of things. So Love School is actually an online space where I am putting a lot of the information I've learned into courses. Like I say, for me, there's like this kind of duality. Sometimes we need to work with people. Sometimes we need to really introspect and work with ourselves. And depending on your nature and your style of growth and what you need at the time, sometimes I think it can be both or either or. So I do courses at Love School, and they are all different kind of levels of courses, but they're based around holistic. And this is considering all the things I've said: body, mind, spirit, which is your energy and your emotions, environments, and relationships. So it's like smaller little courses that people can dive into depending what they need at that time, depending what container they need for that. And then that's got linked with a membership and different ways that you can kind of engage with that. I also support some people one-to-one in more intimate containers where we kind of go through a process together. The main things of that is, one is trauma recovery for people who are in those dark night of the soul situations and they're looking for, I'm a mentor rather than a coach. So what I do is I respond intuitively, looking at the different tools and the different skills that people can build like I say, rather than me say, you need to do that, I'm here to go, well, try this tool, explore this based on what's coming up for them, so that when they are ready, when they're going through that process, they've learned for themselves what works for them, what suits their nature. It's kind of like an unfolding and exploring of their truth as they let go of all of this old conditioning. So there's a couple containers for that. One is that I do is based around work addiction, actually, which might be for some of your for some of your audience.
Yes,
Might
I
be
would think
something,
so.
because this was definitely a big one that I had to go through as well. That's called the art of enough, and we literally like work with the idea of enough. When you've got enough, or when you're reaching your limits of had enough and we want to expand, the kind of duality of that. And that's like a really intimate container where we kind of look at the underlying drives and get into touch with what might be going on a subconscious energetic level for the wounding a lot of the time, when we constantly feel like we need to do more and more, or we're not satisfied with what we have, that sort of thing, which can be going on a lot in work addiction. And the other one is actually through emotional expression and creativity, which is, again, they're all intertwined, so they're all very similar. It's about going from a state of confusion or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you don't understand what's going on, through a guided process, to then get to the other side where you've got tools, insight, and understanding, where you feel more empowered to then understand what's happening for you, what your natural responses are, what your natural cycle is. So I do that. It's all available at Love School if people want to go, Love School UK. And I think I've added some resources for you as well, haven't I?
Yes.
Got people, which I'm really happy if they want to access that you're more
Yeah.
than welcome. There's loads of free resources as well on Love School. If you're just a bit curious and you're like, I want to maybe read a bit more or listen a bit more, have a look over there. As you can tell, I kind of like to deep dive into stuff, and I kind of dissect it all. So there's lots of different bits
Yeah,
of
that's
information
great.
over there, that if somebody's a bit curious and you're like, right, I maybe just want to suss out a little bit more about her, have a look over it. It's all loveschool.uk.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, okay, so guys, definitely check her out. That'll all be in the show notes. Are you on, so where you hang out on social media if somebody wants to just come and meet you or DM you or have a, what's that?
I'm terrible on social media, but so generally at the minute, I have got a few different accounts. YouTube is a good place to find me. I do videos and stuff on YouTube. People can connect. I don't think it's very good for messaging on YouTube, is it? But if you just want to kind of like look at a bit few stuff, that's over on YouTube. Otherwise, Facebook is where I tend to be a bit more active. There's the Love School page, which is more definitely specific to all the Love School content I'm talking about. If you're just interested in all my random stuff, which is a lot more broad. There's my actual profile, which I'm sure I've given you the link for as well, which is, like I say, I talk about the stuff I do at Love School, the mentorship, but also kind of just living life in tune with nature. So that's much more random, is the only way to say it.
Personal, yeah.
Art, gardening,
I love it.
life design, all of it goes on that. Not very organized on the old social media, but people are very welcome to join me and link on there as well.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you for
time
me.
today. I would love to ask everyone, are there any final thoughts or anything that you want to share as we close down our conversation today for the listener?
Oh, be easy on yourself, I think, right? I think when a lot of the conditioning that we've had is always putting so much expectations on ourselves, right? And I think we meet our potential at the point where we can just relax and be ourselves and accept where and who we are, learn how and who we are, what we're good at, what we're not so good at, and then grow into that. Don't try to like grow to be something someone else tells you to be, you know, just find out, just relax and find out who you are. And then the rest will naturally happen. You know what I mean? Go through the process and just be like, right, okay, I'm in it. I'm going to find out me.
Yes, I love that. We're rediscovering ourselves, and that's the biggest gift that we can ever give ourselves. It's like we're taught from the beginning to mask ourselves and hide ourselves and all of the things and be ashamed of ourselves. And then I think the truest gift of life can be just coming back to who it is that we've always been and
We were
loving that version
designed
of us.
intelligently to be a very specific type of energy that was needed at this time, in this
Yep.
space, as part of this earth, right? And the more
Yep.
we're fighting against that, the more stress we're going to cause. And the more that we're not allowing ourselves to be that, the more
Yeah.
impact we're missing out on. Other people are missing out on us. We're missing out on ourselves. We're needed and wanted as we are, like
Oh,
being
I love
ourselves.
that. That's a mic drop. That's a mic drop moment there. So we can end it on that. Thank you so much
Yes.
again, Terri,
Thank
for your
you.
time. Thank you. Appreciate you
Everyone.
all. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now. Soul Sister, thank you so much for tuning in to this entire episode today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and leave a quick review? This allows me to reach more people, and if you found value, I know others in your life will too. Also, be sure to share this episode on social media along with your biggest takeaways so I know what resonates most with you and I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you're looking to dive into a deeper connection than this podcast will allow, consider checking out my Rise to Riches experience in the show notes below. I would love to hear how these messages have helped you take one step closer to living your soul-powered life and becoming the wildly wealthy woman. Sis, let's continue to rise together. I'll see you next time. Bye.